I'm the same way. You know, one of the most complicated parts about being a pastor is hearing bad news and hearing bad news and hearing bad news and holding on and trust to God that God is still at work. So this bad news accumulates. The good news tends to leak. But I think I've discovered the thing that makes the difference. It's when we intentionally practice perspective. It's when we practice perspective. Some of you have noticed probably at this point that I sound like I'm going through puberty again. It's because I have my yearly cold, and I don't get a lot of them anymore, but this one's pretty bad. And you know, I've had a sore throat, and I'm feeling better, don't worry, and I'm like 20 feet from the rest of you, so we're gonna be fine. But I've noticed something that, like, when I'm in the midst of that, and I have that sore throat, maybe you've noticed that too, or you can't breathe the way you think, suddenly all the times that you could do that seem much more important. And this is something that might affect me for 5 days out of the year or something like that. I don't think about the good the other 360 days of the year. And it's because of that same thing. The good that's in our lives, it tends to leak. The bad tends to accumulate. There's something about us as people where we just stay fixated on the bad. And we forget the good. And so this is something we have to practice. Some of you, and I would include myself in this, our lives are relatively good at the moment. You've had some difficult things you've been through. That is what happens. But objectively, your circumstances are good. You eat, you live indoors, your heat works. You know where your next meal is coming from. You know, we live in a time where, at least in this country, despite our challenges, we live in a time of peace. We're not worried about an army coming down the road or a missile strike coming through our roof. We have a lot to be thankful for. And when you start to practice that perspective, suddenly you start to see the good everywhere. And I think the truth is, we will find the thing that we're looking for the most. We'll find more of it. You know, so if you turn on the news and you listen to them tell you about all the bad things in the world, there's something that's going to happen to your perspective very quickly. Everything's going to seem bad. But if you remind yourself of not only the good and the blessings in your life, but the hope that we are offered through Jesus Christ, and you let this story of Christmas that you've heard 1,000,000 times before, and I've heard 1,000,000 times before, seep into the cracks and the worn out places and the broken down places and the dark places and the difficult places of your heart and your life, I think something will begin to happen, because the scriptures promise us something that is true, that the light will shine in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And so if you come back to this silly, crazy, outlandish story of angels and shepherds and a baby, but also the power of God, the power to change and to transform and to heal, the power of the story, the most powerful force that drives how we see everything else in life, and you let it transform you again. And you won't settle for the fact that this is your 10th or 20th or 30th or 40th or 50th or 60th or 70th Christmas where you've heard the same thing before, and you let it encounter you again anew, and you let the power of God's Spirit work in your heart. There's something that will change. There's something that will begin to change in your life. And there's something else that will happen. The good news won't just be a story that is in you. Your life will become a story of the good news.